Parking's pretty tough there in Houston.
No, it's just the plaza for the pharmacy job where I work. It's just the landlord's a jerk, and like all the people he convinces to rent space with him are also jerks because like it's just a lot of limited parking space, and everybody has customers, and everybody will park in our spots, but then they get mad at us when we park in theirs. So it's just no one's happy.
I understand how that goes.
Yeah.
So a little background on me, real quick. I work for Radford University, it's, here in Virginia, and I guess it's the same thing as every other university. Parking is just a complete nightmare. Doesn't I mean,
Yeah.
you got to pay to park on campus, and
Mhm.
you it's basically a lottery if you get lucky enough to actually get a spot. So it's one of those type
Mhm.
deals. So I can just imagine what it's like at other universities. And I'm at a smaller university too, so who knows,
Mhm.
man.
Yeah, no, they find a way to turn it into a business, and you're like, all right, this is
Hmm.
just yeah. Like there's a couple parks around where I live, and normally parking is free, but when they started renovating, all the lots there are paid now, and you're just like, okay, sure. Do I mind spending $3 every time I want to hang out on a Saturday? Probably not, but it's gonna add up, if you're not careful. So
Exactly.
yeah,
Well, let's get into your background though. So
sure, man.
speaking of parking and might start up some conflicts here and there. So you're a conflict resolution coach, is that right?
Yeah, yeah. Basically, the journey to that involved a couple different pivots. One, initially when I was in college, I thought I would be pre-med, like most Asians, and then um, when I got a C in organic chemistry, I thought life was over. I just thought, oh, well, so much for that. I guess I'll just, be a bum or something. I got to figure out something else to do. Still wanted to do healthcare. So convinced pharmacy school that I would make a good pharmacist. And I did enjoy the work actually. At least I enjoyed the subject knowledge and such. But it wasn't my first choice for sure. Not that I've learned. The more I learn about practicing as a doctor, you realize there's a whole side of things that you can only appreciate once you're actually practicing as a doctor. And there's a lot of work you don't realize until you're actually doing it. And it's like, oh, this is what I signed up for. So anyway, um, yeah, so been practicing as a pharmacist for 16 years, but in the middle of that career journey, realized quickly that yeah, I had a lot of growing up to do. My mom felt that working for a chain pharmacy was the best and most secure job option right out of school. And so she insisted on it. And, I didn't have the energy to fight her at that point. So I was like, yeah, sure, let me just go along with this. And so initially hated it, went through a period of about maybe almost 2 years where I was actually at a store that offered me flexibility and scheduling to the point where I was afraid to leave because I knew like if I left, I wouldn't have that again. But then I
Mm.
lost it anyway because I transferred to a different store that where I was unhappy with my hours again. So about 11 years ago, between being unhappy with hours and work stress and customer service incidents, uh, I ended up leveraging my network to get a teaching job at a pharmacy consulting company, which is what I moved to Houston for. And 11 months later, got fired.
Oh shit.
And it was just like, no, it's my fault.
Uh,
I tell people, I'm like, no, I like the idea of being an instructor more than actually doing the work of being an instructor. And you learn quickly. You can't be everyone's friend. You can't be students' friends if you're, a professor or an instructor. There's just a level of professional distance you have to keep,
mm.
in order to maintain some credibility. But anyway, all that to say, then that's where the career roller coaster got really weird. And I ended up at an independent pharmacy job where I was filling for crooked doctors while 4 of my paychecks bounced. So that was a wake up call as to the harshness of reality. Ended up at another job. My friends got me out of that situation to another company that was better, but financially still, um, you know, unstable. They said, "Hey, we like you, but we can't pay you more than 8 hours a week." And so I said, "Okay, not enough to,
What?
not enough to pay rent and groceries. So, what do I do?" And I end up finding more hours by working for them in Austin, which is about 2.5 hours away. I have no idea what my life is going to look like at this point. Um, I that summer was probably one of the key turning points where some friends of mine who work for a pharmacy nonprofit in leadership asked me to help facilitate one of their national meetings just because I was already facilitating on the fraternity side, but not actually on the leadership nonprofit side. And so, of course, I took the chance. And something about teaching leadership kind of unlocked a mental switch in my head and said, you know what, maybe I could actually be good at this leadership thing. And so when the opportunity to take on a full-time position back in Houston opened up a couple months later, I took it and proceeded to try, struggle, fail, largely because I wasn't willing to confront or deal with conflict in a productive way. Like when my boss is writing me bad checks, I'm not like, I'm just getting mad. I wouldn't tell him. I'm like, hey, boss, like what's going on
Yeah,
here,
you wouldn't
right? Like
confront
I
him,
just
right?
didn't know how to have the courage. And then same thing when I would have technicians that weren't pulling their weight. And so at one point, management wrote me up because they said, hey, we're not happy with the way you're dealing with problematic technicians. They are a problem, but they're not the only problem. You're gonna have to take care of this. Um, all that to say, right? Leadership saved my career. The only reason I have job options in pharmacy now is that I took on the challenges of leadership. I have leadership experience now, but um, I got tired of chasing scripts. I got tired of dealing with insurance companies, dictating, money and reimbursement, things like that. And so I'm still finding work as a pharmacist. But, 4 years ago, when my previous employer went under, I said, well, I want to do something different. I'm tired of chasing scripts, tired of dealing with insurance. But I said, but I love teaching these leadership workshops. So what would a career in coaching and facilitating look like? And so tried and learned and did what research I could. But I didn't have the guts to actually open my own LLC or business until the
Mm.
pandemic hit. And so I said, okay, how much longer can I afford to wait? And so niched down to conflict, because that's basically what I've dealt with on every level, whether it's in a professional setting where I've had to fire people. I've dealt with it in a volunteer setting where at one point when I was a church class director, my second day on the job, I found out that a newer guy was sexually harassing women in the class, and they're like, "Jerry, you got to handle it." And I'm like, "You didn't give me a manual, right?" They're like, "Yeah, I don't know how." Right. And then, at one point I had to evict a roommate as well because he defaulted on his lease and basically just banked on the fact that I was too nice a guy to actually kick him out. And so that was a learning experience. So basically, whether fairly or not, all my friends are saying, Jerry, like it's right in front of you. Conflict is, you know, it's your specialty whether you realize it or not. So um, you know that's basically what I've embraced, to say, hey, you know what, okay, I've been through some stuff, let me help other people deal with similar challenges so they can have a greater chance of success without having to maybe skin their knee so many times.
Man, that was a lot to take in right there, bro. but
Yep.
but what I was thinking the whole time while you were talking is that it was almost that all these. Well, I want to circle back and dive into some of those
Of course.
topics but it's almost that just exactly what you just said, that all those experiences in your life and everything set you up just to maybe work
Hmm.
on your mindset and strengthen your mindset and
Hmm.
go into this position just like you said. And actually,
Hmm.
no one likes conflict, and or I don't think no, I mean, only monsters do, I guess. And no,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
nobody, no, nobody, I try to stay away or shy away from confrontation too. I mean, no one wants to be the
Hmm.
bad guy, but
Hmm.
there's certain positions, like if you're in, like you just said, in a leadership position, where if you win and slash if you have to fire somebody, it's going to happen.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I remember my first time I was in a managed position. This was like 10 years ago. I had to fire a student
Hmm.
employee, and it was,
Wow.
yeah, the first time it's tough. 'Cause you don't know how
Hmm.
to do it. You don't know what your style is. You can read all you
Yeah.
want to and YouTube everything you want to,
Hmm.
but it sucks. And then just doing it, it still kind of sucks, dude.
Yeah.
So yeah, dude, I just can't imagine. I mean, that's yeah. So I mean, I guess my next question for you was this. So in your leadership, I mean, is there a certain
Hmm.
style you go to, or do you just kind of
Yeah.
situation, or or how does it work?
No, that's a great question. And so what, yeah, it's kind of funny how, well, you have to find your own style, right? Like
Yeah.
one expression I heard or read about in Inc. magazine, this one owner talks about you have to be like this like velvet fist. So it's not iron fist, it's just covered in velvet so that you have some there. I don't subscribe to that. I guess the style that I use with my leadership is actually very introverted according to like the Berkman assessment, but I think it works for me simply because I patterned my own leadership after the pharmacists I learned leadership from when I helped teach for the pharmacy nonprofit. And Michael Negretti is his name. I will sing his praises till the day I die because he modeled leadership for me. He basically provided the blueprint that I follow now in terms of effective leadership. And by that, the specific qualities I'll go into are: number one, you're just fun to be around, right? People are just like, oh, Jerry's, he's got a bad temper. Oh, I don't want to be around this, right?
Yeah.
You're like, you have to have some warmth, like, to draw people in. Number two, you're fun to learn from, right? People are always, I'm always amazed at what Mike is learning. And I've actually borrowed, like, some of his book lists, because I'm like, you know what, he's reading some really fun stuff. I'm going to read this too, just to see what he's learning. Third is that you are relentless in improving. Like, you don't beat anybody up over errors for too long. You don't dwell on mistakes overly long. You just learn from it and you keep moving forward. Other things, you're continuously tinkering and experimenting and collaborating, because that's what Mike would do for me. He says, hey, I'm working on this right now, what do you think of it? Like, and I realized quickly he was involving me, keeping me engaged. And then and there's no question how hard he works. Like, work ethic is like, set the tone well, and not to enable people and then compensate for them by working hard for them instead of with them, but to make sure, hey, you know what, I got to set the tone. And so that is my leadership style. There are some things I put my own spin on things with these, but it doesn't change the fact that these are some of the qualities of my leadership style that I know are effective. And there's times there's a tough love aspect that they don't really tell you about how to get better at until you have to do it, right? I remember, when I had to fire a technician for the first time, when I officially had to fire one, she's pregnant, and it was just like, like, you don't want to put, this person in this difficulty. At the same time, you have to remind yourself, hey, you know what? If she's not meeting the expectations, the company will die. And, and so either she loses her job or we both lose our jobs. And, I think that was a big turning point in terms of conflict resolution. You realize the cost of not engaging. And when you realize you can't afford to not engage, that's what helps kind of move you forward.
Yeah, I agree 100% with you for sure. I
Mhm.
mean, yeah, if you just keep overlooking a problem and not actually attack it, yeah, it's just going to stay a problem. So it's either do something or
Mhm.
just if, just stay with the consequences, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, is so when you were trying to be a pharmacist, or when you were, or you are a
Mhm.
pharmacist, but I mean, is that something you
Yeah.
always wanted to do even when you were little? Or did you?
No, I mean, as a kid, like, you just want to be like an astronaut or something,
Yeah.
right? Like something, something far out there. And it was fun. I remember when my mom kind of planted the leading question, though, because I grew up around some other cousins who were very successful by Asian standards, right? Both of them went to Harvard, both of them became physicians. Like,
Not bad.
it was just a high bar to set, to live up to. And I remember my mom being like, you want to be a doctor, right? Like Freddie and Albert. And I'm just like, yeah, sure, okay. And then, so I guess I'll be pre-med, because
Yeah.
I chose my major by process of elimination. It was just like, nope, suck at physics. Essays I'm not a fan of. Economics I don't get, you know, history. No, anything involving like writing coherent essays, not for me. Chemistry, transition metals aren't something I'm excited about. So yeah, I can memorize a bunch of knowledge. So I guess I'll be a biology major. So
Makes
yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense to me. So
Yeah.
do you enjoy that profession? I mean, even with COVID times, and is it tough being in this position or that going that
No,
route?
it's a good thing to unpack. So here's the distinction I like to make for people.
Okay.
I like being a pharmacist. I don't like having to work as a pharmacist. And so I'll elaborate on this. I love the drug knowledge that I have. I love the medical knowledge and the technical things that I can discern. I can filter out drug commercials. If people come to me with questions on like medical conditions, I have some baseline knowledge. I can assess things, right? That is, healthcare knowledge is useful knowledge. It
Mm-hmm.
is. But the pharmacy like work landscape has changed significantly since I graduated 16 years ago. And in that, number one, a lot more schools have opened. A lot of, universities say, hey, you know what, this is a good revenue stream. Like, tuition is a good revenue stream for, especially if it's like a 6-year program. And so next thing you know, all these, like, there's like 81 plus schools now that just keep pumping out pharmacists. So the market is much more saturated than what it used to be, and salaries are going down. And and the work environments, these companies realize, hey, we have leverage now, so we don't have to provide some of the bells and whistles that we used to in order to get you to sign with us. And we're just going to take someone that's more desperate than you are if you just refuse to work, right, on our terms. And yeah, so you have a lot of, students who are scared to graduate because they have loans and they're not sure how they're going to pay them off because they don't have a job lined up. So,
I didn't realize the
um,
market would be saturated with pharmacists.
mhm. Yeah, there's a lot of what I'll say is there's a lot of selfish interests involved where people are just like, well, as long as I get my revenue stream, it's kind of like what happened with lawyers and law schools. They're just like, well, it's not our fault if we, pollute the waters because we're not, we're just here to give them the degree. What happens to the job market when they get that degree is not entirely up to us. And for them to kind of wash their hands of that is kind of insulting. But at the same time, they're like, well, we need the tuition money, so we're just going to sell them on the value of the degree, regardless of what kind of job prospects are out there after they graduate.
Jerry, what do you think about the American dream? I mean, when I was coming up, it was always, go to school, get decent grades, go to college, and
Mhm,
then like
mhm,
you just said, you'll get your job that you want. You don't have to, punch a clock or whatever.
mhm,
That's kind of what the little quips that was taught to me growing up. But it's not that case anymore. I mean, just like you said, that some students are afraid to graduate just because of their loans, and
mhm.
that when they graduate, what do they do with oneself? I mean, it's something weighs heavy on my mind now is that because
Mhm,
I went and got my master's degree too, and it was sports
mhm.
management. It's not pharmacy or anything big
Yeah.
time, but still, I mean, it's just like you said that I guess you can get lucky, and I don't know if it's luck's the right word, but you might get a job, but it also might not be the job that you don't want, and hopefully might lead to something you want. But is I guess my
Mhm.
question is, it's probably a long question, that do you think the American dream still exists?
That's a good question. And if by American dream, you have the career and the family
Yeah, the
and the
traditional
house in the
definition.
suburbs thing. So here's the thing: is uh, what led people to feel like that is the only definition of success? Because yeah, do I believe that it's in a way? Yeah, like you have a career, right? You're employed, someone's paying you a salary. You have some degree of a family interaction, which I believe can be super sweet, when you have a nucleus of a family to raise kids properly and have a set of relationships that's going to be there for each other. And you live in a neighborhood that's relatively safe, right? You don't have to worry about dangers or
Crime. Yeah.
anything excessively fatal. But you know what my friends and I didn't realize until after we got these degrees, is that the myth that we bought into is that somehow we could just take our gloves off and hit cruise control after we got all these things, right? It's like you get the degree, oh, I'm graduated, I'm done, oh, I'm getting married, or I'm having my first kid, and things like that, and you realize that it's just a different set of challenges. um, and you're like, I thought, I did everything my parents told me that they said would be successful, and yet I can't just coast now. Like, and now I have to work on my career for another 20 years, right? I have to take care of a spouse who's going to ask me about my day when I'm super tired. I'm going to have kids that, that's a 20-year investment, right? Of like, hey, I got to make sure we have enough money to put food on the table and their college tuition costs and, everything, all these, and then, cyberbullying and all these other, uh, other challenges that you have to deal with, that you didn't think about because you were just focused on yourself. And now you have a set of relationships where you have no choice but to, put the needs of others in play with every decision you make. And I'm not saying this to like discourage or scare people. I just want people to be more prepared for the challenges that they're going to face if they feel like this is what they need in order to be successful. For me, success looks more like having enough passive income so I don't have to be slave to a 9 to 5, so I can actually, um, invest in activities and relationships that are important to me, right? What if we don't have to have a 9 to 5 job, and then we'd actually have more energy for our spouse and kids if we choose to have them? That's what I'm hoping that we can. And even if you don't generate your own passive income stream, just to free up time and space and have margin in your life so that again you can do more of the things that you really find meaning in, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, if you want the American dream, I'm not one to judge you. Like, I would just maybe challenge to say, what led you to agree with that definition of success, and how are you going to prepare for the challenges that we are all now acutely aware of?
Yeah. No, I like what you said about success. I agree with
Hmm.
you right there. Just to have enough different streams of income just to
Mhm.
satisfy your needs and
Yeah.
your wants, and it doesn't, and I'm not a very materialistic person. I mean, I like nice
Yeah.
things, and
Yeah.
maybe one day I'll be blessed with a 1966 Mustang and fully retro modded. But but it doesn't mean everything in life, and I think that's
Yeah.
where uh, some people get the confusion on what success means to them, and
Mhm.
that they think they have to have the fancy stuff and the fancy cars and clothes, and that means, and it's
Mhm.
almost just like a status symbol. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong
Mhm.
with that. I mean, if
Yeah.
that's your thing, I mean, whatever. But it's
Yeah.
not your definition of success might be different from little Billy over here, or whatever you want to say. Uh, but one thing that sticks with me is that I heard this quote one time, and it's just like, it was basically, I might butcher it while I'm telling you, but the gist of
It's
it was
okay.
that you know whenever you walk into a restaurant, all you really have to
Mhm.
do is just never worry about how much it's going to cost.
Mm. Yeah.
Everything else in life is just bullshit. And I just
That's one benchmark for sure. Yeah.
exactly, and that's been sticking with me for the past couple of years. I was like, man, that's probably a lifetime goal with me, and just that
Mhm.
I just think it would be just so badass to walk into a restaurant, and even the fanciest restaurants, you could pay for everybody there if you wanted to, and just that, I guess, that type of
Yeah.
financial freedom. So
Oh, that'd be fun. You go into this really nice steakhouse and you know what? Not just take care of your friends, but you see those things on Twitter where like these pro football players like bless the waiter with like $1,000 tip or something like that.
exactly,
Like, I mean, you
exactly.
want to you want to be generous, right? You want to be like, I have an abundance of things. I want everyone around me in my circle of influence to enjoy it. I think that's a noble thing.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And it's kind of what segued me into my next thing I was just thinking about is that, you know, I wanted to talk, since we're on the success and American dream here, is just, what gives you hope, Jerry? I mean, do
Hmm.
you have hope?
It's a great question. In fact, of the 40 something podcasts I've done, I think that's the first time someone asked me, well, do you have hope? Because I'll admit, I mean, I was a cynic for, quite some time. Like, when I was in my mid 20s and I, had this job I hated. And, my mom lined up a girl that, she was great, but I wasn't interested in pursuing anything with her.
Wait,
Right. I
wait,
just
wait. Your
hated
mom
life.
was trying to set you up and marry the
Oh,
person
oh,
she picked out for you?
absolutely. Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, yeah. Like she had a girl lined up. She had the job lined up. She had her own plan for my life. And here's the odd thing is the ironic thing is that, I actually wanted a good job and I wanted to marry somebody, but not on her terms. And that was tough to admit that we actually were more alike in that regard. But, um, the way she approached solutions and her mentality on things like suffering and adversity were different than mine. Um, my mom, uh she hates suffering. She feels like like struggling is not a good thing. And so and I say this not to undermine her or sound bitter, but a lot of the way she raised me was she just didn't want me to struggle. And I can understand that, right?
sure.
It's not
Yeah.
fun when you have to eat, like, if all you have on for breakfast is biscuit because all you can afford is pancake mix, right? I mean, that's not fun. But I think about Mike Huckabee quote when he talked about growing up poor in Hope, Arkansas, and he talked about when you're poor and there's food on the table, you eat everything because you don't know when you're going to get food again. And I thought to myself, how many like picky kids, how many picky eaters would be eliminated if like they just realize, hey, you know what? If you don't like what's on your plate, then I got nothing else for you.
Yeah, really. Yeah, really.
But I'd say that, yeah, just because I struggled in my dating life to really get into a relationship for a long time. And so by the time I graduated, my mom just thought, hey, you know what, okay, let's just go ahead and line up all these external solutions for you. I got the job I know is best for you, even though she's worked another day in her life for pharmacy. Here's a someone I vetted as a good candidate to be your wife. Don't mess this up. Like, don't pass this chance up. And and I just didn't, and me avert of me being aversion, having conflict aversion, right? I just didn't know how I'm supposed to confront my mom and tell her, no, like, I'm not happy with with what you're giving me. And even if it is good, like, I want these choices to be my own, right? um and so, yeah, it was just a struggle just to get past that point, when my parents had an idea of what struggling and suffering, like the story behind those things, as they say, oh no, that means life is going well for you, when really, if we're honest, some of the moments we grew the most as people came from those struggles,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I wouldn't be where I am now if I hadn't dealt with these challenges. And I think the turning point was to be proactive in taking on those challenges instead of like trying to avoid them or wait for them to come to you. Um, I'm not saying anyone has to go to like Afghanistan and just throw themselves on the front lines. Like I'm not. Please don't think I'm advocating that, but I do think people are not as intentional in their self development as they could be to really make a life for themselves that they would actually be excited to live. So all that to answer your original question, do I have hope? Yes. Um, do I live it? Do I live my life like I have that hope? That's a work in progress. As the tactful answer, I'd say.
I like that. Yeah,
Yeah,
I agree. I like that a lot. So,
yeah,
but I'll kind of go a little bit back here though. That
yeah. Go ahead.
just like what you just said, that a lot of people, you've went through a different path of life than I have,
Hmm.
and vice versa. So,
Yeah.
in these experiences, make a person. Just like you said, you came out the person you are today from the experiences you had in your past life, or your not your past
Hmm.
life, but your previous days.
In
And
previous chapters of my life.
there you
Yeah,
go. That's what I was trying to say.
yeah. We
But
got you.
and just you were talking about your parents, trying to control you and set your life up for yourself, or the way I guess they envisioned it for you. And
Hmm.
and I had a little bit of that actually growing up, and and it was almost just because they wanted that set up for me. I was immediately just it could have
Hmm.
been the world. They could have handed everything to me on a silver platter. I was like, no, just because y'all want that. It was just I don't know if it was teenage backlash or whatever, and just
Hmm.
that whole story. But
Hmm.
you know, this is where I want to start talking about a little bit about the conflict stuff. Is that? But do you think
Sure.
is there something that there's ingrained in humans that they just love controlling other humans? And and obviously, some people agree with rules and they like they get along with authority, but other people have problems with authority and stuff like that. So I mean, and that's where it
Mm.
seems to create a tension. It creates the conflict. I mean, do you agree? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, I see it all the time. I see it in myself, and so I say this not thinking that I'm exempt from this or anything, but I think about a Ray Charles quote I read in an Esquire many years ago, and he talks about he's like I've only encountered two kinds of people: those who want to make you an exact clone of them, or those who basically want to like make you like their puppet or a pawn that they can push around on their chessboard. And I've seen it plenty of times, whether it's with bad roommates or bad sales pitches where people are trying to convince me to like buy this discount travel membership. And I'm just like, you don't even have my interest in mind. Like, you tell me these benefits that I'm supposed to get from this, but really this is about you closing the sale. This isn't about giving me something of value.
Yeah,
You
really.
say it is. Yeah. And then yeah, I mean, like, I think good parenting involves, allowing kids to, find their own path or training them, yeah, one hand to teach them to be responsible citizens in the world. And at the same time, like, it's not your place to dictate what their occupation should be, right? Like, how's that going to work for you?
Correct.
Right. Um, and so, yeah, I see it all the time with myself and, whether my technicians are underperforming and, even though I want good things for them, to control them in a way that, like, even if I had that control, like, would that be satisfactory? Would that be okay? And some people be like, yeah, of course it is. Like, I get to tell them what to do and they're going to do it. Yeah, that's great. Um, and so, yeah, all that to say, yeah, I see it all the time. And sometimes it's, there's a time and place where controlling is good. Like, a dictatorship where they mandate everyone get vaccinated is probably actually a good thing. But very, very, very rarely does that happen where you have a benevolent dictator that's actually going to use that level of autonomy to elevate the quality of life around them and not just use it for themselves, right? I mean, I'll go ahead and say it, right? China is oppressing people for the sake of stability for the people in power, right? The
Hmm.
people in power are saying, nope, we're going to make sure that no one can take over for us because we have a highfalutin lifestyle that we want to keep for ourselves and we don't want anyone taking it away from us, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Hmm. Kind of racked my brain on that one. I was sitting there trying to think of some stuff. Hmm.
Sure, man.
That,
Whatever
that
you
was
need.
that was that was a little that was I didn't even think about the way you just your metaphor on China right there. But I guess you're
Mm-hmm.
right. Obviously, that's just
Mm-hmm.
how it seems to be. Do you think it's just the culture now that it's just from the change from the previous I don't know X amount of years, and this is just the new age of I think because China's trying to be the new or wanting to be the new superpower.
Yeah, I mean, well, here's the thing. This paradox that the more things change, the more they stay the same. And I say this because my parents are from Taiwan,
Okay.
and Taiwan is basically China just views Taiwan as like this disobedient kid. And so I remember back in like '97, when China was firing missiles into neutral space because they just basically wanted to bully Taiwan and just intimidate them and scare them. And it happened again just like a month or two ago. And I'm sitting there thinking, I don't know what they're trying to accomplish by doing this because when China hosted the Olympics back in 2008, right? They wanted to, bring this idea and image of, oh, look, things are reforming, things are getting better, but they aren't. Like they still, I won't even go into things like Darfur or Myanmar, some of the other complicated,
Okay.
neighbor relationships that they have there. Number one, I'm not entirely informed on them, but number two, I know enough to know, like, they keep trying to think that somehow if they just present a good image, it's so Asian. Like let's just keep the house clean for the guests, so the guests like us and they're willing to do this. But in house, no, don't. Like we're going to try to hide these things as best we can, even though we want control and power and things like that. So, it all that to say, right? It doesn't justify the xenophobia that people over here have. I've seen it, right? It's just like no, like just because there are a couple oppressive like Chinese people doesn't mean that they're all going to be like that,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
that's exactly what they did. They're like, well, we can't trust any of them, and it's like, okay, well, you know, I don't agree with that, but it's your choice if that's your belief. I'm not one to convince you otherwise.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Just like because you said earlier, you were working with crooked doctors at one point, I believe, and so
Hmm.
and just like
Yeah.
in every profession, there's going to be bad. All right,
Hmm.
if we'll use doctors, bad doctors, but you're also going to find a doctor that who knows his stuff and who
Yeah.
exactly is there to actually help people and not just doing it for
Yeah.
the greenbacks.
Hmm.
And so
Yep.
it's just a matter of finding those. Even being a pharmacist too. There's some out there probably just
Hmm.
trying just to sell you know, whatever I guess big pharma or whatever you want to call it, drug that they're
Hmm.
somebody's pushing
Yeah.
on them, but they're actually
Uh,
no, you don't- no, they're actually knowing the person's like that your body's not going to react well to this,
mhm.
said drug or whatever you want to call
Yeah.
it. So it's
Yep.
just a matter of finding those good people in life, and this.
Yeah. It,
And you might
it
have a few
is.
bad experiences, and I guess that's maybe just the way it goes, but hopefully not.
Hmm.
But yeah, just how it is. I guess that's life's not fair. I guess is what I'm just trying to say.
Yeah, and it's we can go into the whole well, how it's more about how you respond because everybody deals with brokenness on some level, right? Like I sometimes relationships you have no control over, who your neighbors are, right? Or like when your parents make friends with somebody and then they head over there and now you're supposed to get along with their kids,
Yep.
even though like they get actually little snots, right? You're
Yeah.
just kind of like and yeah, I just remember just being really frustrated at some of the relationships that I had to deal with, in high school or college or whatnot. Um, the irony is that the most difficult ones are not the ones that start off poorly, but the ones that were really good and then went south. Like there was some kind of falling out. But all that to say, right? I mean, I think, yeah, just knowing that you're going to deal with this brokenness is more about, yeah, how do you show grace? How do you show forgiveness? How do you make sure, like, when a wave of life stress hits you, like, you're going to be able to bob and stay above with it instead of
Mhm.
like it gets swept under? Because, yeah, everyone deals with it. And I used to have a really big sense of entitlement of, I shouldn't have had to deal with this roommate. God, I shouldn't have to deal with this job situation. Um, but it's more about, okay, as I go through life, what gauges can I use to see if someone really is someone that can be a friend, possibly a lifelong friend versus someone who's just kind of like a one-off and we just are here for a season, or I quickly understand after one or two interactions I need to keep my distance from this person because they are going to be a toxic influence if I let them too close, right? And you have to go through a couple. I mean, it's okay to make mistakes in this regard. Just hopefully, everyone's hoping they aren't fatal, right? When it comes to like, oh yeah, I cleaned out money or things like that. Like a quick example just to amuse people. I remember when my ex roommate's fiance was like admonishing me to get online and get online to start dating and like fix that like singleness in my life or whatever. And it was hilarious because I told this to like one of the other employees I work with. I was just venting about her, and he goes, "You know what happened to one of my friends when he got on eHarmony? Like he met a girl. After a month, he gave her a key to her house, and she cleaned him out.
Oh
Like
shit.
yeah, like classic honey pot. You're just kind of like, oh, I'm gonna draw this in, and then zoop, right when I get everything, I have access. I'm just gonna just take everything for myself. And so,
Oh
uh, you
no.
know, be careful, guys.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
tough, man.
Yep.
That sucks. I mean, yeah. I mean, how do you come back from that? I mean, that's just tough. But,
Yeah, you focus on the lesson and not the loss, right? Like
yeah,
it's easy to talk about because we're just distance from the situation, but it is,
yeah,
on one hand, well, she didn't kill you. So in some way, this will make you stronger, right? You probably, in a way, this could be the best thing that ever happened to you to wake up and realize, hey, you know what? I will never, I will be much more discerning in the women that I allow to move in with me.
yeah. That person just had no idea that that was that girl's initial plan was just to clean him out? I mean, was she just a toxic
No,
person in general, or like
well, no.
could
I
everybody?
mean,
You know,
it's
they say love is blind. I mean, could everybody see that she was like, for a better word, a dumpster fire, and then just but everyone, but that person was just no, she's fine. You know, we're good. Don't worry about it. And then all of a sudden, that one day, yeah,
Yeah, well, she's playing the long game. That's what she's doing. She's just like, how much chess do I need to earn from him before like I get what I need? And
yeah.
it is kind of scary that people do play that game. So yeah, it's just be careful. I mean,
Well,
it's a lot of brokenness out there, guys. Just be
well,
careful.
so with being a conflict coach, like you're a
Yeah,
conflict resolution coach, do you see a lot of
yeah.
clients who are afraid, to get toxic or let go of toxic people in their lives? I mean, that's one thing I've kind of only outside looking in is that it could be a family member, it could be a friend, or
Mm.
someone like yourself when you said that people were trying to take advantage of you at some of your
Mhm.
points in life. I mean, is that just an issue? Just people cannot? Is that a security blanket? They just don't know how to let go of toxic people, or
No,
what,
that's a
what are your
great
thoughts?
question. I mean, I think it's just more about, yeah, on one hand it is about toxic relationships because sometimes you can't just fire like you're like your aunt that you have to see every Christmas, right? Like you can't just be like, you're fired, Auntie Jen. Like I don't appreciate your opinions on what career I should take or the woman I should marry, so therefore I'm blocking you online, and please do not call me again, right? Like that's just not going to go over well. And even if you are secure in yourself, that's just a lot of awkwardness every Christmas that you're going to have to deal with.
Oh yeah.
I think for me, it's just thinking about my experiences and so the people around me, right? It's more about having the courage, like a mix of courage and compassion to, let's say you are dealing with a roommate who's a little sloppy with the dishes, or they crowd out the laundry machine or things like that, right? Just to say, hey, look, you know, here's the standard that I'd like to hold myself to, and I believe is a good standard for everyone who lives here. When wash your dishes after you're done, or making sure the laundry machine is not filled with your clothes once they're dry, like to empty that out well. Are these things that you agree with? And they can say something like, well, yeah, because like, no one would say no to that, right? Unless like you, but and then you can say something like, so and this is what I've noticed, right? Can you tell, maybe you had a bad day, and you just didn't feel like washing the dishes, but can you tell me a little more about these things, right? And so you actually take the time to learn. Maybe they did have a bad day, or maybe they're just, they never built that habit, right? Because they had an overprotective mom who'd wash their dishes for them, and they
Mm.
just never realized, what. So you develop that curiosity and that empathy, and you say, well, okay, and then you make a humble ask, right? You say, well, what, and you can tell them, like, ask them, like, what would it take for you to be more diligent in cleaning your dishes, right? Not for my sake, but for your own, right? Now, this is a case of self-development as opposed to just like placating my preferences for, and my expectations for you as a roommate, right?
Yeah.
I wish I'd had the courage to say these things to, when I had difficult roommates, because I was just in a very conflict averse mindset. And, yeah, I just really wish I had someone to tell me, hey, this is how, here's a script for this conversation, so that you can actually maybe get some results. You might fail, but, he might not take it the way you want him to, but at least, hey, you were honest, and he knew exactly why you're upset with him, instead of just like me just trying to bottle it in and just be like, well, I'm afraid if I say something, we're just gonna, this is gonna escalate quickly.
So you just said strengthen your mindset, and then
Hmm.
I know you said, I think we touched on it earlier, that these experiences in your life has like kind of helped
Hmm.
strengthen your mindset. But is there anything else that you do outside of that, as far as is there certain books? I mean, certain other I don't know, videos. I don't know, just anything, meditation, just anything you do just to keep a strong mindset, and just if conflict arises, that you're ready to go.
Yeah, great question. I mean, some of the turning point resources for me that really helped kind of helped me refine my own personal approach to this was one book called Difficult Conversations. You just type in Amazon, right? They got a good title. You're like, I don't know how to have difficult conversations. Just type in Difficult Conversations, done. And they provide a good framework on how to, how to negotiate, or not even negotiate the incentives, just anytime you have some broken expectations. Another good book is The Four Conversations by Jeff and Lori Ford. That's the one Michael had introduced to me, talking about specifically closure conversations. And so this is like kind of like a script or an operating procedure whenever someone breaks a promise or things don't go as expected. And now if say things like don't let them off the hook, like follow through quickly, don't let resentment build, because like if you do not put out this fire quickly, it's just going to escalate. And they talk about things like knowing what to apologize for, right? You say, hey, I'm sorry things didn't go as expected. Whether I did not make my expectations clear, I didn't follow up enough to be sure that you were on track, or I didn't provide the resources that you needed to get this job done. I'm sorry that somehow I might have failed you as a leader. So given that there is something wrong, how can we work to reconcile? How can we make sure that we learn the important lessons and that we do our part as teammates to make sure this doesn't happen again? And so, yeah, so those are things that help me, kind of stay sharp with my conflict resolution skills. And I remind myself, right, what's the cost of not engaging? If am I content to just stay in my comfort zone and just overcompensate and get burnt out and resentful again? It's like, no, like I'm not going to be productive. I'm not going to be focused, and I don't want this sitting on my mind. So let me do the right and necessary thing. Find 10 seconds of courage to get that ball rolling, and just trust that even if this conversation goes poorly, at least I spoke my mind. And so at least I can go home knowing that, hey, you know what? At least I went down swinging. Right.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, you just keep fighting until you can't fight anymore. So
Yeah.
do what you got to do. So when dealing with this, I mean, when with other clients and stuff, do you think there's a huge problem with people? They don't want, like you kind of touched on earlier, they don't take responsibility for their own actions. It's always somebody else's fault. There's always an excuse why X problem is happening. I
Mhm.
mean, what are your thoughts? What are you experiences like
Oh,
dealing with that?
victimhood is, it's
Oh,
actually
that's
really
a
fun. When it's never your fault, it's
yeah,
fun. You're just like,
yeah.
traffic sucks, and these people are jerks, and my teacher was unfair, and because I was that guy, right? I got a C in organic chemistry, and even though, I there were still circumstances that were unfair. I had to own up to the fact that I needed to put in more work. I should have asked for more help, but there were plenty of things I could have still done to
Mm-hmm.
like try to salvage a better grade. um and when I initially, like, I'll be, here's another situation where I just got frustrated, right? Like, um basically, I'll out the two names of the companies that I was considering working for when I was on the verge of graduating. I worked for Walmart Pharmacy as an intern. I actually really liked the company. I liked the stability. I liked the fact they didn't have a drive-through, and I was hoping the district supervisor would be willing to hire me. Meanwhile, CVS had already made an offer, and of course, my mom was immediately like, "You got to sign with them. Like,
Yeah.
we have friends who work for them. I don't want you worrying about your job. Like, Dad had to as an immigrant. Like, you need to take this job." Even though I knew, like, I wouldn't be happy working for CVS, but I waited like 3 months for Walmart to finally make an offer. And of course, just my luck. The day after I finally take the CVS offer, like, my Walmart supervisor calls. It's like, hey,
That's how it
yeah, can we
goes.
talk about how? My mom was like, well, that's all his fault. He should have, da da da. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh, like, why didn't I just wait it out for myself? Like, why wasn't I more proactive in getting him on the phone? Right. Like, in hindsight, it would have been like, hey, Brad, CVS is already making me an offer. Like, and it's binding. Like, if I sign this and I want to work for you, and I'm not sure if I'm going to, because, like, there's a lot of pressure for me to sign with them right now.
Sure.
Like, right. Get him on the phone, do a little more, rattle the cage a little harder, just to be like, hey, man, I really want to work for you. Like, what you got for me? Right. And so, yeah, it took me until like my mid 30s though, until I finally start to own up to because here's the problem, right? The problem I didn't want to admit to myself was that I realized that if I own up to my decisions, then I have to own up to the fact that I made a mistake. And then, like, if I made a mistake and I beat myself up, I'm like, oh god, like, I was so stupid. as opposed to just being able to separate that and say, hey, you know what, that sucked. And as long as I'm still alive, like I still have a chance to do something great.
Yeah.
This does not define me unless I let it. And so, yeah, victimhood. I think about a guy I knew at the church I used to go to. He would complain about being lonely and single. And then we would ask him, well, when are you going to ask out a girl? And say, well, you're not supposed to, I don't want to like,
Hmm.
hit any tripwires with any relationships in my immediate circle. I would have just respected him more if he just said, I hate rejection and conflict.
Yeah.
Like, just admit these
Yeah.
things instead of saying,
Everybody
no,
does.
no, I'm
Yeah.
helpless. Like, maybe God's keeping me single and I can't get anywhere. And I'm
Mm.
just thinking, well, whether I believe you or, agree with you, how helpful is that? Right. So, what do you do with that?
Mm. What do you do with that? You know,
Yeah.
one thing you just kind of just touched on a little bit there that I recently read, you're a Texas guy, Matthew McConaughey's book, Green Lights.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And basically, it's a book, regarding his whole life and talking about
Hmm.
how he got to each, job or acting job and what experience he went through and whatever. But the
Hmm.
gist of the book is like he was looking for opportunities and which he would call a green light. And it
Hmm.
stuck with me that, say if you had somebody, all right, so we'll use dating as an example. You have a
Hmm.
chance to ask out a person, like she's giving you every sign, every hint that
Hmm.
like right here it is, but
Hmm.
you choose not to and you close the
Hmm.
door and you go home or whatever.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
you gotta be aware of those green lights now. Like, hey, this is your opportunity. And then yeah, rejection sucks. I've
Hmm.
been rejected and it sucks. I hate
Yeah.
it. And I don't wish it on
Yeah.
anybody.
Hmm.
But and kind of what we've been saying this whole podcast. So, you learn from your mistakes, and then if it
Hmm.
is a mistake, and then it changes you, and then maybe you learn something to do different the next time, and then maybe you do
Hmm.
find the right one. Maybe she was just
Yeah.
trash, and you didn't need her in your life anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just one book that sticks with me nowadays. Is that just yeah, all right. Look for these opportunities, and then if you see an opportunity, go after it. Don't be afraid.
Hmm.
Worry about the whatever later. It could be one
Yeah.
of the best things. It might be the worst thing, but just if you want to get somewhere in life, you gotta take action.
Yeah.
So
That's a good reminder for sure. And rejection hurts. We're not going to deny that. And at the same time,
exactly.
as a being in a manager's position, you realize like you have to say no, right? Because I shouldn't just give a job to someone just because they applied, right?
Right.
I can't, like, we had like 20 applicants for a technician position at one point. Like I can't take them all. Like I have to say no,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so you realize, no, there's when you can have a little degree of empathy to realize, hey, like I mean, even applying to podcasts, right? There are people who are kind enough to say, hey, I love your pitch. I love your story. And I don't think it's the right fit for us. So, I'm not gonna have you on my show. And but they took this time to still give me a compliment, which kind of eased the blow a little bit. But then, and then that's okay. And that's okay. Right. I realize that like my story is not meant for every podcast.
Right.
For the ones that I felt were a good match and they just said no for whatever reason, I'm just like,
Yeah.
but maybe they're overbooked. And people have told me that they're like, I don't have any space. You have a great story. And at the same time, the ones that are nice will say, well, message me in like 6 months and we'll see where we are. Those are the ones that are civil and professional. At least they give me, at least they just, it's not a no a flat out. It's just a not now.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, the nice thing with a no, it means I get to move on.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just like, oh, you know what? I don't have to dwell on this anymore. I can just go on to the next one. It's okay.
Exactly. You move on.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the conflict resolution coach. So how does it work? So if I'm having say I'm a client
Hmm.
and I'm having I don't know issue with you talked about a roommate earlier. I'm having an
Okay.
issue. Would I just seek you out and then just say, hey, I need some consulting, or tell me
It's
how
a
it works?
Yeah, no, it's a great, how do you onboard people, right? I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, I mean, basically, easiest way if you want, just, I have a website, adaptingleaders.com.
Okay.
You can schedule a complimentary 30-minute call. And so if that's all you need, no strings attached, if that's all you need to really kind of help process your situation and then you're off to the races, great. Um, if you're dealing with multiple layers of conflict where it's just like, hey, I don't know what I even want out of life, or, my parents' expectations are just really weighing on me, or I have a boss that's just temperamental and passive aggressive and I don't know how to handle, like, I don't know how to have a good working relationship with him, then yeah, there's some more specific modules. But yeah, easiest way, hey, just get me on the phone and we can talk through some things. And so a typical call like that I would just ask you a couple, key questions around areas that I'd like to shed some light on, right? To just ask yourself, things like, what's the story behind this conflict, right? Let's say you do have a boss that's temperamental and you're just like, well, what's the story?
Yeah.
Well, the story I'm telling myself is, yeah, I feel like, he's just looking for excuses to fire me, and I really don't like, walking in the eggshells every time I go into work. And they'll ask you something like this. So what's the real challenge for you? What's the real challenge here for you? And they'll say something like, well, I think the real challenge is, I need to be able to find the courage in order to, sort out expectations with him, right? I really want to have a conversation where we can figure out what a good relationship would involve and look like, and what kind of work that would take. It's like, and then I would say something like this: what's your next action? What's your next action? And then say, okay, well, maybe tomorrow I ask him when he has like 15 minutes or 30 minutes available where we can sort things out. And then, and if that's enough for you, great. And if you say no, I want more of this, and you say, okay, well, here's my rate. I'll follow up with an invoice if you're excited about it. So that's pretty much it.
So you just keep going with the until the problem actually gets solved.
Yeah, I mean, it's whether we solve it in 30 minutes or if they want to invest in more long-term, investment in coaching, sure. Yeah. I mean, uh I'm one of the few people I'll actively say I'm trying to work myself out of a job, Chris. Like if you've been with me for 2 years, you should fire me because I clearly haven't helped you long enough.
uh,
Typical coaching engagements can range from like 6 months to a year.
okay.
I have modules that are meant to like last like maybe 3 months. I give you some material, like some worksheets to work through, jot down your thoughts with some pointed questions, and then a coaching call every month or something like that for 3 months, and see if that's enough to get you get you your own wings and kind of fly on your own, right? We want people who are strong enough, because if I'm doing a good job for you guys, then ideally you'd give me referrals and say, hey, Jerry actually helped me get better,
Yeah.
like go to him, right? So yeah.
Is there an ideal person you actually look for and working with, or is it just kind of just whoever comes your way, or
That's a great question. The ideal client is Asian professionals or Asian American professionals in their late 20s, mid to late 20s or early 30s. And I say this because um, that's the age that I wish I'd had more guidance when it came to life decisions and success and things like that, right? Because at that age, usually most of the Asians are like, okay, well, I did everything my mom and dad told me to do, and yet somehow I'm still not happy. Like I have a an accountant, right? He's like, I got a great 9 to 5 job, I got my nights and weekends to myself, and yet I don't feel like I'm being challenged enough. Like, what's it going to take, right? Or it's like people are like, oh, I'm single, and like, and I just feel lonely. Like, how do I deal with this, right? Or even worse, people are like, I'm married with kids and I still feel lonely. Like, I don't, I thought this would be enough to satisfy me, and yet I've realized there's just a whole lot of work that I'm not, I'm struggling to maintain. Good relationships and life stress and things like that. Yeah, so ideally, yeah, people in this age range really they start to notice this cognitive dissonance between what their parents are telling them and then the world they're living in. And so it's like, hey, maybe I need a guide to help me sort this out. So I wish that's what I had. So that's kind of what I want to help with.
I'm gonna ask this question at that
Go ahead.
and if I mess it up or anything, just let me know.
It's okay.
So if I said I'm just not well informed. So is Asian culture, like, is parents usually telling their children on how they want their lives predominantly? Just, is that predominantly in Asian culture, or is it
That's a great
just
question. No, thank you for asking that.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, with Asian culture, it's what's called an honor shame culture, right? You do things that bring honor to the family, and you avoid things that bring shame on the family.
okay,
And honor they define as get good grades, learn a musical instrument, go to a good school, marry a pretty and smart woman, like have kids that will also get good grades, go to a nice school, get a nice job, start their own families,
yeah,
right? To do what? Get married, have a job, start a family. And yeah, you want to, propagate the family name. Like success means having, lots of, grandkids that all carry your surname, because, China went through a pretty rough phase with their one child policy, because if couples had a daughter, like they knew they were going to have a daughter, like there are a bunch of abortions, because they're like, well, they're not going to carry on the family name if they get married,
yeah,
so therefore we don't want this one kid, we want a son. right? And so yeah, a lot of it is, I remember thinking about my life, right? Just I remember my dad would, um, we spent a lot of time doing SAT prep books on Saturday mornings, and I get it. Like, I don't have to watch cartoons like all the time. Those are probably toxic, but at the same time, it's not fun telling people, yeah, how did you spend your Saturday morning? Oh, did you have like a nice family brunch? It's like, no, I did algebra 2 problems because that was what my dad wanted me to work on. But yeah, it's a lot of it is just, hey, work hard, and they withhold their affections because they feel like if they give you too much assurance that you're just going to get complacent and not work harder at it. And so I'll admit, I resented the process until I started winning like math competitions and stuff like that. And then you're just like, you know what? I like the success. But then you're so emotionally scarred to the point where you become an approval addict. And now you're saying yes and subjecting yourself to, validation that is unhealthy, right? Because you're just like, well, I want people to like me. I like this success. So what do I need to do to keep getting this approval? And then that you have to take several years to unlearn that.
I've always wondered that just because, it seems like in movies and TV that that's almost the cultural narrative that's actually portrayed in
Mhm.
certain movies. And I've always wondered, is that just part of Asian culture that they expect, a certain standard of their, children? But I mean, and I'm not saying no family should not do that or whatever,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
it just seems more portrayed in that type of culture. And I was just like, maybe that's just how, it's just expected of them. I just didn't realize it. So
Yeah, well, I mean, and it's true for a lot of any honor. There's because Asians are not the only honor shame culture out there, right? Like, there's plenty of Middle Eastern people that prescribe to the same formula,
yeah.
and so it's obviously just more magnified because that's what I grew up with. But yeah, I mean, if you want a more of a window, yeah, just watch or read Joy Luck Club, and or some other things that give a window into kind of the day to day for this kind of culture for sure.
Yeah. You just
Yeah.
you said something a little bit ago right before I asked that question, but that
Mhm.
a lot of people have regrets, and I do myself, and that
Yeah.
we're always looking back on our younger years and just wondering like, oh, I should have did that different, and man, I wish I
Yeah.
would have known that then, and stuff like that.
Mhm.
I mean, is there anything going through your life experiences and your story that you wish you could, get in the DeLorean and go back in time and tell your younger go tell your younger self?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I you have to be careful that you don't get consumed with that because yeah, like you can't. I think a good book for everyone to go through is Designing Your Life, and one of the best phrases from that book says, "Don't spend your future hoping for a better past." Um, and I keep that in mind every day when I just wake up and I'm like, I wish I didn't have some of these wounds. But you know what? If I'm alive, I can still do something like productive today. I can still design a life worth living today, right? I can still do something if I'm intentional to do that. But yeah, if I had to go back in time to tell my younger self, I would be like, hey, if your roommate's, doing bad things, like it's okay to tell them. Like,
Yeah.
you don't have to withhold things. Be tactful, but be intentional, right? And just be okay with the fact that things might get worse before they get better. Like, I wish I'd just done that. Or I'd also tell myself, hey, remember, whatever you decide is your decision, right? You can say no to things, and it's okay for people to disagree with you,
Yeah.
just because they don't think you should say no. Um, you know, be okay with the fact that not everyone's going to like you, right? It's okay if they don't like you, and if they get more upset with you because you said no, then it's all the more reason to validate that no is the right answer, right? um yeah, and look out for anyone who's overly pushy. Like, if they're pushy, that it's not loving. Even if it's your parents being all pushy, that's not loving. That's a control thing. So anyway.
No is a very powerful word and something that I've
Mhm.
learned throughout, jobs and friendships
Mhm.
and,
Yeah.
just all around experiences that it's a
Mhm.
very powerful word. And some people, sleep on it, I guess is a way to put
Mhm.
it. That because you think that, you're trying to be the good guy and stay away from confrontation, that you have to say yes, but then you just make yourself
Mhm.
miserable. But if you can learn to say no at some
Mhm.
certain major points in your life, that, it helps out, helps your mental health, especially for me, in my
Yeah.
experiences.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, you say no to something, and that's another great opportunity cost question, right? You're saying, well, if I'm saying yes to this opportunity, what am I saying no to, right? I'll give an example. So at one point, I was helping out with this elementary school math competition. It's just a fun chance to volunteer, and I actually really enjoyed doing it. And then the next year came around, and they say, hey, we need volunteers for this, competition again. And I had to ask myself, well, if I agree to do this on a Saturday morning, what am I actually saying no to? Like, what else could I be doing with my time? I could be sleeping. I could be reading book. I could be, working on this business plan for this business I'm helping to launch. And it's like, oh, I'm going to have to say no to this. As much as I would like to be there, I'm going to have to say no because there are other things I'd rather be doing, or more important things I need to be doing. Right. Um, and when you embrace that, right? Because the problem is not whether you have to discern between good and bad, because anybody with a moral compass can do that. It's when you have to choose between the good and the great, right?
Yeah.
Um, so two things that, I have to choose between all the time. Like people say, hey, Jared, we're gonna have a jam session, bring your guitar. Or, hey, Dynamo are playing, like, let's go to a soccer game. And I'll be like, but there's salsa dancing on Saturday nights. And it's like, I'm going to choose salsa dancing pretty much every time, because like, I love, guitar is fun, and, soccer games are fun. But if you have to choose between those and salsa dancing, I'm going to say yes to salsa dancing just about every time. So, yep, hard to admit, but it's true.
Hey, I want to talk to you about salsa dancing, but
Yeah, go for it, man.
but
Yeah.
I had another question right before you said
Yeah, go
salsa
ahead,
dancing.
please. We got time.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
we're good.
We got it good. So somebody asked me this, and it may have been a couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago, but so
Hmm.
obviously, no amount of money ever bought another second of time, or not that I'm aware of it.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, if you had an extra hour out in your day,
Mhm.
how would you spend it?
Oh, great question. I'm gonna have to borrow that one for later. Honestly, I could
I
just use
took it
more
from
sleep.
Tony Stark, by the way. So no, anyway.
No, that's cool. I mean,
Yeah.
I would just get an extra hour sleep. I'd just be like, you know
Oh.
what? Yeah, or I would just use that time to recharge, whether it's like reading a book or meditating, or, just being able to just, take it easy, right? Just, enjoy a nice cup of coffee and a sunrise in the morning, right? Just be like, you
Ooh.
know what? I could put
Ooh.
my day on pause for an hour. Yeah. Like I'm just gonna sit and enjoy myself, with things that I normally have to speed through. Just a quick tangent, right? Like when COVID shut everything down, I wasn't cooking to enjoy a meal. I was just cooking because I just needed something to cook, right? I'd crock pot things, and that was nice. It was efficient, but I wasn't taking time to really savor a meal.
Oh yeah.
And so when COVID shut everything down, I realized on Sunday mornings, instead of going to the gym, I would go on a walk through the neighborhood. I'd come home, I'd make myself a spinach and tomato egg scramble,
Okay.
and I'd cover it with pepper jack, shredded pepper jack cheese, and I could just sit and enjoy it. Oh, so good.
That sounds nice, man. Sounds like you eat pretty
Yep.
clean though, too.
I have to. A story I've not shared on any podcast right now, so this is like, exclusive content for you, Chris.
Oh, okay.
Well, so yeah, I mean, normally, like, yeah, I mean, I've worked out since college, and so that was when I started getting serious about just like getting in shape, and it was nice. But I also had a lot of help, like, because my mom was a great cook when I lived at home, while I was still in Tennessee. But when I moved to Houston 11 years ago, all of a sudden that support network was not there, and I grew from it, but I also went through some rough patches, and the rough patch I'm going to mention here, guys. No one wants to believe me because I'm so skinny now. I actually gained 35 pounds, like living in Houston the first like 3 or 4 months I was there, because I was eating out 2 or 3 times a week that I hadn't been before. The friend initially I live with is a chef, and he's a great chef, but he wasn't entirely cooking healthy things, like entirely healthy things at the time. And so when I gained this weight, I told the gym that I was joining, I was saying, no, something's wrong with the scale. And they're like, no, the scale is not the problem. And so I quickly realized, okay, I got to cook more of my own food. I'm going to start attending my friend's free boot camp in the park. And it wasn't until I ran my first trained for my first half marathon, that I started getting my waistline back down to what I was used to. So yeah, it's yeah, the irony, right? And we talk about enabling people pretty much over the course of this whole hour, right? In a way, indirectly. Um, my mom always wanted me to learn how to cook, but I never learned to cook anything meaningful until I stopped relying on her help. And so when I finally lived by myself, and I was just like, okay, I want to get to a point where I can actually enjoy the food that I'm cooking for myself. Took some
Sure.
work, took some
For sure.
experimentation, but eventually, yeah, now I get to. The fun thing, when you become a good cook, you meet a lot of other good cooks. Like, rich get richer. Like, it's
Oh
just
yeah.
amazing how many more people start to talk about like recipes, and you start to experiment, and you're all, cooking for each other, and it's fun. Anyway, that's the fun tangent. But yeah, that's one of those exclusives where people realize, you know what? Uh, I wouldn't have expected that about him. I'm just like, well, the story is true whether you believe it or not, but
Yeah.
just, hopefully you get some useful nuggets from that.
I didn't expect you to be a runner too, though. I mean, how long you been running, or is that just something new?
Yeah, that phase ended
Uh, uh,
7 years ago, so
oh,
that's a
okay,
fun
okay,
journey too.
okay, okay.
But I mean, I could share this. I mean, because I didn't do any serious long distance running until I was 30. Like, we had the chance to meet Susie Favor Hamilton at one of the leadership conferences that I went to, and
Yeah.
so we ended up running basically a 5K with her. And so the following spring, there was a charity 5K for what was Sudan at the time, which is now South Sudan. And so that was the second time. And I didn't even want to time myself, Chris, because I'm just kind of like, oh, I don't want to time. I don't want to fail. I don't want to look bad.
I
It's like, no, that's
understand that. I
ridiculous.
understand that.
Yeah, the culmination of all that running, did a half marathon in the Woodlands back in 2012. Did the full New Orleans Rock and Roll Marathon in 2014, and then I said, nope, the novelty's done. Like, I don't want to do this again. Like, I enjoy being in running shape. That was probably the best shape I'd been in for a long time. But I get more fun just more cardio just dancing a whole lot. So that's my fitness for right now.
Yeah. So what's up with the salsa dancing? How did this come about, though?
Oh man,
This
yeah,
sounds fun.
great. Yeah, yeah. Oh, great journey for sure. So yeah, freshman year in college, they have a spring formal, and they tried to introduce salsa dancing to us. And Chris, the lesson was terrible. Like, they taught us a couple things. We're bored. It's frustrating. We're like, okay, no. And I again fixed mindset. Right? I'm just like, oh well, if I'm not good at this after 2 or 3 passes, I'm just not gonna. It will never be good at it. Right? Just the pessimism was very prevalent at that point. And so what's funny is when I got to Memphis for pharmacy school, a friend of a friend was apparently starting up a salsa dancing scene in Memphis. And so by my third year in school, my grades had kind of gelled. And so, I just got sick of studying. I was like, well, if I can kind of, not study so much, but not like take my GPA won't take a really big dip, then I'm just going to go and get a study break and sign up for some lessons and do it for real. And then I actually kind of got good at it, and I really started to enjoy myself. But then I graduated and I moved to Knoxville, which has no salsa scene. Like, they have a swing dance scene, but by now I was hooked on salsa. And so I went through this really bad cycle of like rust and lack of confidence. And then like I miss it, but then I'm rusty. And then, so I get glimmers of dancing, and, but it just stayed dormant for a long time. And even after I moved back to Houston 11 years ago, the initial crowd I started to hang out, spend a lot of time with, was all into two-stepping. And so I was
Huh.
dancing more, which, so it still helped, but salsa stayed dormant. But what I love telling people is that 7 years ago, um, a Venezuelan friend invited me to a free salsa event in downtown Houston. And I said, all it took was one skilled, pretty blonde. And I said, I got to bring my A game when I dance with her. And it was like everything just kind of unlocked, where it's just like I stayed on point. My mind didn't go blank trying to think of moves to dance to or dance to use or anything like that. And I finished the dance and I said, oh my gosh, like, why did I stay away from this for so long? And then I said, okay, I'm back. Like, I got to make this a regular thing again. And yeah, it's just been beautiful to watch, because I help out as a volunteer instructor now with one of the local college clubs at my alma mater. And even with other dancer friends, we'll use dance lessons as a vehicle to raise money and awareness for groups that for causes that we believe in. And so it's just fun to elevate the playing field, and so on out. Now it's not just, oh wow, Jerry's a good dancer. It is, Jerry helped me become a better dancer.
Yeah.
I get to do that. So yeah, it's been fun to just watch everyone grow from our efforts to share in this love for dancing.
Is it salsa easy to pick up, so to speak?
uh
Or you gotta
I
be very coordinated, or
I mean,
'cause
it.
'cau
I'll tell people it probably,
what
it
do
helps if you have like a musical background, and so you kind of have some level of coordination. But it does take some. I mean, it took me like about a year before I finally felt comfortable leading. So I'll
okay.
be happy to tell people, even though I grew up playing piano and violin and all these things, like, just to understand the frame of the dance, and uh, how to navigate the dance as you learn to, like, the correct footwork and stuff. It can take a bit, but if you're willing to, really, it's more about, it's kind of like what James Clear says in Atomic Habits. It's not about time, it's more about repetitions, right? So if you spend 6 months like really intensely trying to get the footwork and fundamentals down, you probably learn more than someone who just kind of passively attends a lesson once a week for like 2 semesters,
That makes
right?
sense.
But yeah, I mean, if you really put in work, yeah, if you could probably get the hang of it in like 6 months or so.
6 months.
Yeah,
Oh,
I'll be happy to help you.
I mean, I've
Money
always,
back, right? Money back guarantee.
I've
Just
always
if it
watched
help you,
movies and stuff like that, and that's when if you see salsa dance, like, man, that looks fun. So I
yeah,
mean, I don't have
oh,
a
it's great.
really of a dancing background anyway, but it's just
It's okay.
some of that stuff when I'm watching on movies and stuff, it's like, it just looks fun, Just you got the
Yeah,
music going, and like you said, a beautiful
mhm,
blonde, and just
yeah.
like, yeah, man, getting down with it.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. No, try it out. Like I tell people, just look, just try it for 6 months. I'm sure you have Groupons that are super cheap. It's like the cost, barrier to entry is very low at this point. Like you have YouTube clips that I never had when I was trying to learn how to dance. It's like you have so many more resources to study music and other things. And so, yeah, just, try it out for a couple months and you say, you know what, after 6 months, if I feel like I put in enough work, I'm still not really getting it, or I just feel like it's just not worth my time anymore, then yeah, just cut it off. Otherwise, and even if that's the case, like it's still a success because you challenge yourself with something new, right? And now you have
yeah,
appreciation for a new skill, and you have a dimension, a new perspective that you wouldn't have otherwise. Because now when you see dancers, just like you can figure out, oh, okay, that one's a novice, this one is an experienced dancer. Right now, you can see the world a little differently because of your experience, because you decide to immerse yourself in it, right?
yeah, for sure. Is
Yeah.
salsa dancing the only type you do, or do you got other?
No, it's a good question. So the three types that I really kind of have the strongest background in, the first is East Coast swing. That was my first love. Like I love old big band music, or even not so old band music, like Big Bad Voodoo Daddies. That's fun music, right? Like
Write
um,
that down.
but the second would be salsa, and then the third would be two stepping. Sadly enough, one of the bastions of country dancing here in Houston called Wild West that actually closed during the pandemic. But yeah, I mean, so those are the three styles I can help people get the hang of. But those are all my strongest kinds of dancing. Yes.
Nice, nice. Well, Jerry, you've been a cool dude, man. I appreciate you coming on here telling me your story, man. This has been fun. I say we take it home on a good note. So,
Sure, man.
um,
No, go ahead.
yeah. So if anybody wants to find you, look you up. I know you said your website earlier, but this is your time to say it
Sure.
again.
Yeah.
And anything,
Yeah.
anything you want to
I'll
say.
sum it up for him. Yeah, I'll sum it up for you. Yeah, just check out adaptingleaders.com. Got some, fun free stuff on there. Whether you can download a guide on how to navigate difficult conversations, schedule a complimentary 30-minute call, or just check out my book blog where I summarize and give takeaways on interesting literature. By all means, just find me or find me on LinkedIn and just connect there. Yeah, just happy to share my story and see if people would be encouraged or inspired to strike out and do something different with their lives after hearing my story, for sure.
Great, great. Hey, you said something about that Atomic Habits book. Is it good?
Yeah.
I got it on my
Yeah,
list. I got it on
Atomic
my list.
Habits. Yeah, that's a good one. James Clear, he talks about the four aspects of really building a habit that you want to stick with. That's to make it obvious, attractive. I'm gonna flunk this test. Obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying. There we go. And so the flip side to break a bad habit is basically like you flip those four on their heads, and so you say, okay, you make it hidden, you make it difficult, right? You make it let's see, obvious, attractive, easy. Yeah, you make it unattractive, and you make it unsatisfying, right? And so if you hit all those four things, like if you say, hey, I want to journal in the morning, it's like, okay, make it obvious. All right, how do I make it obvious? Put the notebook next to my phone in the morning when my alarm goes off, right? Make it easy. Hey, just write 2 or 3 sentences. You don't have to write a whole paragraph. Just do that, right? Make it attractive. Do I give myself a reward? Do I get to watch my favorite Netflix show after reading this, right? And then how do I make it satisfying? It's like, okay, how do or yeah, you involve other people that are holding you to this habit to say, hey guys, I journaled today, and they can all say, hey, way to go, right? And so now you have like all this reinforcement helping you move forward with building a simple, helpful habit.
Great, great. Yeah, let's take it home on that one. I like that. So
Sure, man.
yeah, this was fun, man. I appreciate you doing this again. This was awesome.
Hey,
So
glad to meet you, Chris. I'm so glad you gave me a chance to get to know you through your podcast. And yeah, whatever we can do to support each other going forward, please let me know.
I agree.
Happy to stay in touch.
I agree
Yeah.
100%. All right,
Yep.
everyone, we're out of here. Good night. We're going. Good
All right.
news and good
Good
night.
night.